All right, so we got this book,
Mm-hmm.
Influentia,
Okay.
all about, you know, making your voice heard at work, and
Mm-hmm.
it's in Spanish.
Oh, wow.
Challenge accepted.
Okay.
We're all about unlocking those aha moments, no matter the language.
I like it.
So,
Yeah, it seems like you're especially interested in navigating the dynamics of a tech team.
right.
And this book by Hugo Martin
Yeah,
might have some universal truths that we can all apply.
absolutely. But we're diving deep into this book to help you understand the core ideas and give you some actual strategies for boosting your influence at work.
I love it.
Yeah.
The book kicks off with a metaphor that really grabbed my attention.
Okay.
It compares your value at work to an elephant.
An elephant.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What's the connection?
Well, think about it. An elephant's big, it's impossible to ignore.
Uh-huh.
But somehow we often manage to overlook the value people bring to the table.
That's so true.
Right.
It's like sometimes you're working your tail off, but it feels like no one's noticing.
Exactly. And the book digs into how communication breakdowns can contribute to this.
Yeah.
It's not always intentional,
Right.
but different teams develop their own ways of speaking, almost like their own dialects.
Oh, I've definitely experienced that.
Have you?
It's like trying to explain a complex coding issue to someone who's never seen a line of code in their life.
Right.
You know?
The book gives some great examples of this, like business dialect versus design speak.
Uh-huh.
You might be saying the same thing, but the message gets lost in translation.
This reminds me of the story in the book about Javier,
Oh,
the
yeah.
junior programmer.
Right.
He was making huge efficiency improvements for his team, but no one seemed to notice at first.
Javier's story is a perfect illustration of how impact isn't always immediate.
Right.
Sometimes it's a slow burn.
Mm-hmm.
You're building your reputation, demonstrating your competence over time.
Yeah.
It can be frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
But the book argues that this is actually how you earn lasting influence.
That's a good point. It's not always about making a big splash. It's about consistently delivering quality work and showing your value.
Right.
So how does the book suggest we do that?
Well, it lays out 5 key principles
Okay.
for becoming more influential.
Hit me with them.
First up is clarity.
Okay.
The book really emphasizes clear, concise communication.
Uh-huh.
No jargon, no beating around the bush,
Right.
just getting straight to the point.
I can see how that's important, especially in tech, where things can get pretty complicated.
Right.
If you can't explain your ideas clearly, you're not going to get very far.
Exactly. The next principle is assertiveness.
Okay.
This is especially important when it comes to saying no effectively.
Ooh, that's a tough one.
It is.
I feel like so many of us struggle with saying no at work.
I hear you. The book outlines 3 techniques for saying no
Okay.
in a way that's respectful but firm.
Okay, I'm all ears. Tell me more about these techniques.
The first technique is the no but approach. This is where you decline a request, but you offer an alternative solution.
Right.
It shows that you're engaged and willing to help, even if you can't take on that specific task they're asking for.
That makes a lot of sense. So it's like, no, I can't do that right now, but T, I could do this other thing instead.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The second technique is negotiating terms.
Okay.
This might mean accepting the task,
Uh-huh.
but adjusting the timeline or scope to make it more manageable.
So it's about being proactive and setting realistic expectations.
Right. And finally, there's the direct, no and here's why approach.
Okay.
This is best used sparingly,
Right.
but sometimes you need to be direct
Mm-hmm.
and explain your reasoning for declining a request.
That's true. Sometimes you just have to stand your ground, especially if you're being asked to do something that's unethical or goes against your values.
Exactly. Now, the third principle the book highlights is divide and conquer.
Divide and conquer. Okay, that sounds a bit aggressive. Are we talking about taking over the office?
Not quite. It's actually about breaking down large projects into smaller, more manageable phases.
Ah, so it's more about project management and setting yourself up for success. I like it.
Right. By dividing the work into phases, you can communicate your progress more effectively, manage expectations, and spot potential roadblocks early on.
It also makes the project less daunting, both for you and for the people you're working with.
Absolutely. And speaking of making your work more visible, the next principle the book focuses on is data as your defense.
I'm sensing a theme here. It's all about being strategic and making sure your contributions are recognized. So how does data play into that?
The book argues that documentation isn't just about covering yourself.
Uh-huh.
It's about building trust and credibility
Right.
by having evidence to support your decisions and demonstrate your impact.
That makes sense. In a data-driven world, you need more than just your word to back up your ideas.
Exactly. Having data to support your claims makes you more persuasive, helps you track your progress, and ultimately strengthens your influence.
So it's like building a case file. For all your brilliant ideas and accomplishments,
Yeah,
solid evidence, no hearsay.
exactly. And that brings us to the fifth and final principle,
Okay.
prioritizing impact over urgency.
I feel like this is so relevant, especially in the fast-paced world of tech.
Yeah.
It's easy to get caught up in the whirlwind of urgent tasks and lose sight of what truly matters.
Absolutely. The book argues that not all urgent tasks are truly important.
Right.
It's about stepping back and strategically focusing on activities that align with your goals and genuinely move the needle.
Okay, so how do we actually do that?
Mhm.
How do we filter out the noise and zero in on those high-impact activities?
The book recommends regularly evaluating the tasks you're facing and asking yourself,
Okay.
does this truly contribute to the bigger picture?
Right.
Is this going to make a real difference, or am I just reacting to the latest fire drill?
That's such a crucial question to ask ourselves.
Right.
Because I think we've all been there feeling super busy but not really making progress on the things that truly matter. It's almost like we're running in place.
Exactly. Now, if you recall,
Yeah.
we talked earlier about those 3 techniques for saying no effectively.
Right.
Well, they tie in perfectly with this idea of prioritizing impact.
Oh, I see the connection.
Yeah.
If you're constantly saying yes to every request that comes your way, you're going to be spread too thin to focus on those high-impact activities.
Precisely. Let's say your boss asks you to take on a new project,
Okay.
but you're already swamped with other commitments.
Right.
Remember the no-but approach.
Yes.
You could say, I appreciate you thinking of me for this. Right now, my focus is on... and mention your current priority.
Right.
However, once that wraps up,
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to discuss how I can contribute.
That's so much better than just saying a flat-out no.
Yeah.
You're acknowledging their request, explaining your current focus, and offering a potential solution for the future.
Yeah.
It's assertive, but also collaborative.
Exactly. And by setting those boundaries, you're demonstrating that you value your time and are committed to delivering quality work,
Right.
which in turn strengthens your influence.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
Mm.
What about negotiating terms?
Okay.
When would you use that approach?
Let's imagine you're asked to complete a task that's doable, but the deadline is unrealistic.
Okay.
Instead of stressing yourself out trying to meet an impossible deadline,
Mm-hmm.
you can negotiate. You might say, I'm happy to take this on, but to ensure I can deliver it to the high standard we both expect,
Right.
I'll need, and propose a revised deadline or adjust the scope of the work.
It's about taking ownership of your workload and setting yourself up for success.
Right. You're not just passively accepting whatever comes your way.
Mm-hmm.
You're actively shaping your work environment to make sure you can deliver your best work.
Now, the direct, no, and here's why, approach.
Yeah.
I'm guessing that's best used strategically, right?
Yes. This technique is most effective when there's a clear and justifiable reason why you need to decline a request. For example, let's say you're asked to do something that conflicts with your ethical principles or goes against company policy.
Okay.
In that case, you might need to be more direct.
Right.
You could say, I understand the need for this, but I'm not comfortable taking it on because, and state your reason clearly and professionally.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to take a stand. Okay, so we've covered the importance of saying no effectively, but what about that divide and conquer principle?
Yeah.
It seems like a really helpful strategy, especially for complex projects.
It is. Breaking down your work into smaller phases has so many advantages.
Right.
It helps you communicate your efforts more clearly, manage expectations, and identify potential roadblocks early on.
I can see how that would be beneficial, especially when you're working with people who might not fully understand the complexities of your work.
Right.
If you just say, this project will take a few weeks, it's hard for them to grasp all the moving parts involved. But if you break it down step by step,
Yeah,
it paints a much clearer picture.
absolutely. And remember, data as your defense plays a crucial role here, too.
Right. Because if you're dividing a project into phases, you can use data to track your progress
Yes.
and demonstrate the value of each step.
Exactly. Having that documentation helps to build trust, show your impact, and ultimately strengthen your influence within the team.
Okay, so far we've talked about clarity, assertiveness, dividing and conquering, and using data as your defense. It seems like all these principles are interconnected, like pieces of a puzzle that fit together
Yeah.
to create a more influential.
Yeah, I agree. And if we tie it all back to that elephant metaphor,
Yeah,
it's about making sure your value is as visible as an elephant in the room.
that's a powerful image. So what would you say is the key takeaway for our listener? If they could only implement one thing from this book,
Hmm.
what would you recommend?
That's a great question. I think the most important thing is to be intentional and strategic in your approach.
Okay.
Don't just react to whatever comes your way. Take the time to evaluate your priorities, set clear boundaries, and make sure you're focusing your energy on the tasks that will have the greatest impact.
That's fantastic advice. It's about working smarter, not just harder.
Exactly. Now, I'm curious what's resonating most with you as we've been discussing these ideas.
You know what really strikes me is how this book emphasizes that influence isn't about manipulation or forcing your way to the top.
Hmm.
It's about building genuine relationships, communicating effectively and consistently demonstrating your value.
I completely agree. And it's about advocating for yourself and your ideas in a way that's respectful, assertive, and data-driven.
It's about making sure your voice is heard, not just for your own benefit,
Right.
but for the benefit of the team and the organization as a whole.
That's a great way to put it. It's about being a valuable contributor, not just a worker bee.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here,
We have.
but I want to make sure we circle back to something we touched on earlier.
Okay.
The idea of different teams speaking different languages at work, it's something I think a lot of people can relate to, especially in tech.
Absolutely. Remember those examples from the book, like
Yeah.
business dialect and design speak?
Yes. It's like everyone has their own jargon and ways of communicating and can create so much confusion and miscommunication.
Right. And that's where the principle of clarity comes in.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
It's not enough to just be clear in your own mind.
Right.
You have to be able to communicate your ideas
Yeah.
in a way that resonates with the people you're working with.
Exactly. You have to be able to bridge those communication gaps and speak a language that everyone understands.
Mhm.
And that might mean adjusting your communication style depending on who you're talking to.
So if you're explaining a technical concept to a non-technical audience, you might need to use analogies or simplify your language.
Right. And if you're presenting an idea to a group of executives, you might need to focus on the big picture impact and ROI.
It's about being adaptable and tailoring your communication to the specific needs of your audience.
Exactly. And that's a key skill for anyone who wants to be more influential at work.
Now, the book also talks about the importance of documentation,
Uh-huh.
which we've already touched on.
Right.
But I think it's worth emphasizing again
Yeah.
because it's such a crucial part of building influence.
Absolutely. And it's not just about CYA. It's about having a clear record of your accomplishments, your thought process, and the impact of your work.
Right. It's about creating a portfolio of evidence that you can use to support your ideas,
Yeah.
track your progress, and demonstrate your value to the team.
It's like building a case for your awesomeness.
I love that. And it also helps to build trust and credibility.
Definitely. When you have the data to back up your claims,
Uh-huh.
it shows that you've done your research, you've thought things through, and you're not just throwing ideas around randomly.
It shows that you're a valuable asset to the team.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've unpacked a ton of great strategies from Influentia.
Yeah.
It's not just about climbing the ladder.
Right.
It's about making a real difference, right?
Absolutely. The book really drives home that true influence comes from a blend of competence, clear communication, and adaptability, but never at the expense of your well-being or the quality of your work.
That's such a crucial point.
It is.
It's easy to get caught up in the hustle and forget to prioritize our own well-being.
Exactly. It's about finding that sweet spot
Mhm.
where you're pushing yourself to grow and make an impact,
Right.
but you're also setting healthy boundaries and taking care of yourself.
So for you, the listener,
Mm-hmm.
what's the one thing you can take away from this deep dive
Yeah.
and apply to your own work life right now?
If we go back to that elephant metaphor,
Okay.
imagine making your value as undeniable as an elephant in the room.
Right.
What's one small change you could make this week to start shifting that perception? Maybe it's trying one of those no techniques, getting better at documenting your achievements,
Mm-hmm.
or taking a step back to reevaluate your priorities.
That's such a great challenge.
Yeah.
It's about taking action, even if it's a small step.
Yeah. Exactly. And remember, like Javier in the book,
Yeah.
your impact might not always be recognized instantly.
Right.
But if you're consistent, if you keep demonstrating your competence and communicating your value, you'll build a reputation that speaks for itself.
Love that. So go out there, make your value known, and let that elephant shine. Until next time, keep diving deep.